Hello and welcome back to another fantastic edition of Five Things Friday, APAC edition, with my wonderful co-hosts, Reef Quayle and Laura Doonin. Hi, guys.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm
Hello.
good. How are you both doing?
I've actually, after a month of the event being past, almost a month past the event, I've finally succumbed to a cold. I've got a head cold.
Okay.
It took 3 or 4 weeks, but I'm there now. I'm finally
You've had a
getting
shave
out of
as
my.
well.
I have. That was I felt like I decompressed enough to have a shave.
And Laura, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so I'm going to start this week. So the one thing that is super interesting is this Middle East focus on luxury and how luxury sales defies the global slowdown in luxury. And so while sales stall in places like China and the US, the Gulf region is still going ahead. Luxury spend rose 6% year on year in 2024, reaching 12.8 billion. And as the global market contracted by 2%, forecasts for the region have sales at 15 billion by 2027, which again, I sort of understand why there's so much focus in the region. But again, when you break that down and you look at malls, and you heard me talk about malls or shopping centers as dopamine villages. Well, these are malls as cultural cornerstone and growth drivers, which sort of physical retail still remains dominant. Great news for all across the Gulf, with Saudi Arabia expected to see over 80% of fashion and luxury transactions happen in malls by
Saudi's going completely crazy. It's a
Yeah.
real there's a real transformation happening in the Middle East.
It might be an appropriate time to drop a plug for the Five Things Friday Middle East edition that will be coming out as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, there's a lot of cool things happening up there.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of people who are one based in Saudi, one based in Dubai, and we're going to look at that anyway. I'm not going to talk about that, but that will be coming. So when you look at Dubai Mall, and the picture that you're looking at is the new extension to the Dubai Mall, it attracted an astounding 111 million visitors in 2024, which sort of capturing virtually all international tourists in the city. And it's a luxury mall expansion, which is around 408 million dedicated to new high-end retail spaces. So there is no stop. This is just continued growth. And I think the world's millionaires need somewhere to go above and beyond the south of France. When we zoom into Saudi Arabia, going back to what Reef was said, you see that in Riyadh, it's sort of rapidly appearing as a luxury destination with landmark developments, again, physical developments, a Solitaire, which will be launching this year and feature luxury brands and experiential retail, and the Avenue Malls of Saudi, which is very similar to, again, what you heard me talking about, the dopamine villages, which is Westfield's up-and-coming entries in the Saudis' ambitious retail future. And then all of these are sort of underpinned with VIP experiences that are sort of enticing the elite consumers who now expect, specifically culturally, they expect privacy, they expect personalization. They want prestige as a standard, not as an option. So, culturally, they do, female shoppers have to shop separately. But these things have always been like an added option, and now that's just expected as a standard for transformational experiences. And even digital first brands like Onassis that have established VIP physical suites to match this type of demand. And, you would think, all of this focus on physical, does that mean tech is not happening? But they're still leaning into tech innovation in this new luxury paradigm, which looks at AI stylist, NFT-based products, immersive digital experiences beyond the novelty, beyond what we see as sort of these sort of one-off marketing activations. With 55% of the MENA region, a population under the age of 30, luxury retailers sort of find themselves having to integrate digital, sophisticated, and cultural experiences, having cultural sensitivity to main relevance and leadership. And so, golf has transitioned from a peripheral luxury market into a trend-setting market. And I think we're just going to see that more and more over the next 3 or 4 years, which will sort of define how luxury brands such as LVMH approach personal immersive experiences, which I think they can sort of borrow and take to the world. So that's specifically on Dubai and the Mall of Dubai and its expansion. But I'll just share this video with you, which is just mind blowing. Thanks to, this is the Shanghai Eye on YouTube. So, go get over to YouTube and watch their video, but I'll share it here with you. And this is Louis Vuitton's flagship store appearing in downtown Shanghai. And this is not a rendered, CGI. This is the store. It is a luxury cruise liner, 30-meter height structure. And, they interview these two local, this is a French guy tourist who they just sort of, he was pretty much mind blown. And for those who are based in Europe, they may have been to Champs-Élysées. They may have seen the LVMH flagship store in Paris, which is the iconic Louis Vuitton suitcases stacked together. But this is just taking it to a complete different level. It's just incredible. When you look at why they're doing that, the sort of top 5 strategic insights behind what's going on here, this is LVMH experience over product, which is the sort of new luxury blueprint. LVMH and its sort of peers in the industry are prioritizing creating emotional resonance between their experience over product. And I think, again, I noticed this when I flew out to NRF, going through the airport, where they're lending their names to sort of experiential things such as cafes, restaurants, cultural engagement, merely overselling just product, right? Let's buy the new LVMH handbag or whatever, luxury trainers. This is about having those engagement moments, the sort of strategic pivot addressed to consumers' deeper desire for fulfillment and emotional connection beyond that product, which is still important. But China's luxury boom sort of has faltered, sort of has prompted these strategic shifts. And when you look at how the sector shrank over the last 3 years, and I think it shrank 18% in 2023, and it sort of stagnated in 2024, 2025, the property market limited that growth. They're not going to be opening thousands of more stores. They're going to be opening these massive flagship points. And
on the Middle East, it's so interesting to watch, and it actually makes me uncomfortable because what you say there, it's really catering to the mega elite, the super wealthy. Like, you can just imagine Jeff Bezos and his wife after they've done their Venice thing, they'll go there for their shopping trip. It's so extravagant, it's so excessive, and it actually starts to make that Shanghai experience look kind of more normal now. It's so interesting seeing this pop up, and it really makes me think, like, Europe still is, when I think about fashion, it's still there, but there's this different echo chamber coming out of the Middle East. I've stayed in Dubai. I remember, like, when that was years ago, and the 7-star, the Atlantis, and the shops in there. I remember going in and being like, I need to leave. Like, I didn't even know these brands and these price points existed. So I feel like it's always been there, and now they're just putting it in their face, and they're really making it the destination for that elite crew. Yes, it's really something else which I was thinking about is, I feel like in the more common, the more normal brands and the commoners out there, there's been a lot of, like, these.
It's so normal.
Yeah, let's call them more normal or relatable. There's been a lot of these, like, let's do it for the gram, like, activations pop up.
Yeah.
And we're moving into a bit of they're going to drop off because a lot of them have just been noise, and we've matured past that. And then you've got these kind of flagship, the shop that looks like a boat. I reckon these more mid-tier brands that have done the do it for the gram, the activations, the funny, the silly things, probably now have to think about what's real, like, what is that experiential retail look like for them, and where do they actually put some stake in the ground and make it a real presence rather than just a pop-up.
Yeah. Ruth?
I think that the thought you've mentioned with the gram is really interesting. I mean, if you're going to the Gucci cafe in the airport lounge, it's going to the gram, you know, like it's almost like these luxury brands are creating gateways towards them. And so I can't buy the handbag, but I can go part of the way. And so
experience.
I have an experience, but more importantly, have an create earned media for that their consumers or the aspirational consumers want to see, right?
Yeah.
You know, to be in the airport going through Dubai and go to a Gucci cafe and share the experience because you're excited because you're on a plane.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And and Gucci may have not got that share if they just stayed totally in retail.
When you look at the brands in terms of LVMH, Kering, Richemont, Hermes, they're all recalibrating their strategies for China to sort of adapt to these new market realities. As luxury within China grows and luxury Chinese brands grow, they're faced with these pressures. But sort of laboring the point, experiential luxury outpaces physical goods. So through global personal luxury goods sales, as I mentioned, that dropped by 1 to 3% in 2024. Experience luxury sector like hospitality, curated events, that grew by 5%. And that's driven by young consumers increasingly preferring sort of these memorable experience, like you were saying, Gucci Cafe, you take your camera out, you put it on Instagram or TikTok, and it provides that dopamine validation or that validation for the consumer, which challenges that whole physical possessions marking but both of them are still there. And again, just to sort of finish off, flagship stores as cultural icons, very similar to what we've seen in Dubai, we're seeing in China, and the LVMH store sort of see this. And my prediction, this will spread out like Formula One for cars, where the technology there sort of goes into mainstream cars. This will happen, and it will have a massive impact, because what we'll see that store closures, specifically in China, aren't sort of retreats. It signals the strategic direction of retailers going for few powerhouses and reducing their network of stores, and luxury sort of leading in that, luxury houses sort of redirecting investments to the smaller stores. And in summary, you know, LVMH involves strategic priorities, reducing the noise, enriching meaning, and then looking at how to cultivate that cultural resonance. And I think the future definitely belongs, as you've seen in Dubai and as you've seen in China, to those retail brands that can enrich the personal experience, but it takes it just beyond product acquisition, and hence why culture becomes such a key thing. I think, Laura, you were going to go next in your...
all right. I've just got one for you guys today, and I was reading the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I was laughing, and they said, "Yeah, well, I was reading a highlight reel.
What do you sleep?
I was laughing at the word surge. So it looks like the retail sales year on year for last month have surged 3.3%. I don't know if I'd call it a surge, but that's what they said. And so retail sales are reaching 37.3 billion in Australia. So reading without them mentioning specifics, but it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out. It was saying 11% growth has came from online bargain shoppers. So it's just a little bit potentially skewed wrong, right? Like, it gives the sentiment that retail in Australia is doing well, but it's actually, we're at a bit of a crisis point where rents, rates, businesses are quite worried. Local businesses, that 11% growth online without bargain shopper is 100% coming from the Temu and the Shein and the likes. You know, we know that they're a massive focus on this market. Last year, their sales were from Shein were 1.2 billion to Australian consumers. So yeah, and it led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And the Australian Fashion Council, the CEO, has been very vocal about potentially needing to put some guardrails around Australian retail. But at the same time, one of the issues we have is 97% of fashion items sold in country come from offshore. So it, like
And
I think, yeah,
yeah, and guardrails don't work though. Like I know, Alibaba dropped $1 billion in infrastructure in Korea. The Korean retailers are up in arms, lobbying the government to put protectionist measures in place.
Wow.
But if they're arguing about that, they've already missed the boat. If we're worrying about protectionist measures, they've already missed the boat. It's already done.
yeah. The one thing I quite liked about what she was saying, I know that in France, I think they've put like a bit of a tax back on fast fashion. The one thing that I think it's great. However, I start to question who pays for it. Because if you put a $5 tax to the consumer if they buy fast fashion, but the alternative here is not really there, they're going to pay the extra $5, and the only person that is affected is the consumer. So I do like the fact that the Australian Fashion Council are like actually going, first we need to look at what's going on in our backyard and have a bit of an assessment and how we build up some kind of manufacture. Can we go back to some level of manufacturing control in country? And it really just talks, I mean, Alex, complete extremes, right? You're talking about Dubai and the Middle East, this super luxury, and then just this back to the normal world, which is the retailers with physical retail, they're hard at it right now. So yeah, so spend is up and sentiment is in the middle of the road with the consumer, and the sales are up, and it's been driven by more Chinese goods coming in and flooding the Australian market. So we'll have to just watch how that plays out.
I haven't got good news then for the Australian Fashion Council, because my first one today is a little bit about something that's happened earlier this year, and that is the re-entry of Chinese technology to India. And we've seen in March, April this year, the launch of a partnership between Reliance Retail. So Reliance is probably one of the largest retail conglomerates in India, and Shein. So Shein's been banned for 5 years. In that partnership, right, operational control rests with Reliance. Data localization, all the data is stored in India, so Shein doesn't have access to the data and addresses all the privacy issues. And the technology operated under license by Reliance. But the key thing about this partnership, apart from the scale it can take to the Indian market, is that all of the stuff that's being sourced for the first time has been made in India. So you think about that, because Shein then go, well, okay, cool, we can do fast fashion Chinese sourced, but for us in Australia, it's going to be Chinese sourced and Indian sourced. So all of a sudden we have two global powerhouses coming together, right? And this is really, this is not just an implication for India domestically, but for the Shein platform and every market in which they operate. So from an Australian point of view, to your point, Laura, we're going to see a lot more product because there's going to be a lot more supply, because we're coming from two production mega houses of India and China as opposed to just one. So this is a big change. And this happened this year, and it's like, you automatically achieve scale if you're Reliance and you're in India, but then you take Shein's distribution around the world and their ability to source product from both India and China, and this is game-changing in global fast fashion. Okay. So that's number one. The number two thing I have today is I'm going to talk about the first technology in retail that's going from east to west rather than west to east. And I'm talking about live commerce. Now, so for many of us in Western countries, you really don't get the scale of this. So to put you in perspective, coming out of just before 2020, one of the world's largest at that time live commerce events was Alibaba's Singles Day, so 11th of November day in 2020. Their pre-sales campaign generated $7.5 billion US in 30 minutes, all live commerce enabled. Okay. So you go, okay, cool. That's China. Like, it's not us. It's massive, right? But that's still pretty massive. But then let's bring it closer to home. So let's talk about L'Oreal now. Now, L'Oreal is a live commerce aficionado in the region. So when I talk about L'Oreal came out of COVID and went, you know what, we're going to do something online. So they launched live commerce in Malaysia. So they produced, and they have obviously a virtual beauty festival. They extended to brands like L'Oreal brands like Garnier, Maybelline, obviously in L'Oreal Paris, for example. There were 8 brands they used. When they launched this campaign, so Malaysia's 35, 40 million people. It's not so much bigger than Australia, so it's a mid-sized country. It's not massive. They did more sales for L'Oreal in 24 hours through live commerce than they would normally do for a whole month.
Wow.
This is in recent times. This is insane. So we're not seeing this technology arrive here, but the thing I would say is that Gen Z, right, are the most global demographic of all time. So I can guarantee you they all know, no matter where they're domiciled, what each other are doing. So it will happen, right? It will happen in London, it will happen in New York, and it will happen in Sydney. The second one at L'Oreal case study, which is amazing, L'Oreal is so committed now to live commerce in Southeast Asia that in Indonesia, in Jakarta, they have 14 live commerce studios running 24/7, beaming content around the region, around Southeast Asia. Every market in Southeast Asia is doing double-digit e-commerce growth. So L'Oreal is running 14 continuous streams simultaneously. Everything from makeup tutorials to hair care products to usage, and this is going completely nuts. Now, so obviously Indonesia, you say, is like 300 million people, the 4th most populous country in the world, but they're actually streaming that all out around the region as well. So Vietnam is experiencing double-digit e-commerce growth, all these markets. So this is wild, right? This is so this is going to happen in all markets around the world because Gen Z will drive this, and the next generation, Generation Alpha, will be all over this.
Rafe, do you think, because I know that they shop very different, right? And they've all had it's been driven by apps and it's always been available to do. And then we've not really had it available to do. But then do you think it will, I think it will have a place, but I think we've got TikTok shop in UK and the US.
TikTok, so I'm not, with these platforms, the content is being produced, they're agnostic of platform. It's TikTok shop. So TikTok ByteDance, more than 50% of Tokopedia. Now, Tokopedia is the eBay in Indonesia. So we're seeing the sale of the product. Live commerce is being the platform, but it's being being sold through Tokopedia, through Shopee, and through L'Oreal's own branded channels. Okay, so as a consumer, you've got a choice. We're not saying it's TikTok shops is just one of them, right? That what we're saying is they're producing the content and pushing it across multiple platforms.
Right, and again, this might be a dumb question. To me, live commerce it's a theme. Are you saying it's a tech?
No, it's not a tech. It's a theme. Basically, this content stream that is really L'Oreal's not fussy if a consumer sees it via Tokopedia or a consumer sees it via Shopee or a consumer sees it via their own owned media brand channels.
Yeah, I think the likes of doing it right now, and let's use Australia, the US and UK, we've got TikTok is where we can get a lot of that. Then the websites, I guess, could be doing more live commerce, but then we're limited in the platforms that do it, whereas Asia has been so overly indexed and that's the way they love to shop. So I said that's going to be the barrier, but I totally get you. And only brands that scale can actually do this.
Yeah, I think you've got platforms. There's a distribution piece, an audience media distribution piece, and there's a platform piece. They're the two pieces. But in Australia, you saw Live Commerce Australia launch all of the work with Oz Hair and Beauty, right? Oz Hair and Beauty have got a program running non-stop now in Australia, so they're doing it. So Guy Napper and his crew, so they've been doing it. So this is out there in Australia. It hasn't not happened here. And for them, I don't know how many. They're talking about hundreds of thousands of social media followers. They could mobilize and create a movement like that. So I think to your point, Laura, it's not just there's got to be platform and technology capability in the market, but there's also got to be audience around those platforms to actually make it pop, if you know what I'm saying. The thing about Oz Hair and Beauty is that they've got a huge following socially, I think probably on the gram, right, which allows them then to go push back out to the gram and then push them back to their own channels, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. But I think those channels that will establish, but I think, consumers, people are people, right? So, and we've talked about Gen Z before, they are the most connected globally of any generation, right? They know each other's good. And Australia's a good example, right? Most kids going to university, English is their second language in their home in Australia, right? Big population of Asian, Indian, all around the region, right? We are not European-led country as much as we think we are. And this generation particularly is enormous, and they are already connected and orientated this way. And so we're just waiting. We're waiting for the technology platforms to become available, and we're waiting for the distribution mechanism. And I mean, it's not live commerce, but you only have to look at what Jane Lou's done with Showpo in terms of the way she's used social media. It's a small step, it's not a big step.
I definitely think in the more I think the aspects of it that will work really well, and they haven't been adopted to where they have. I just think we've got such a different. I remember when live commerce tech popped up a few years ago, a lot of the retailers found, and I think that it's changed. It's changed since then. Is that people wanted video content, but they weren't that into the live by right now. However, I've seen I work with a business called TVSN, which is like
I know them well. Shopper Media,
the TV shopping channel. And when you look at how the consumers behave watching TV, it's live shopping, right? They're literally buying. It's showing them a countdown on screen. It's been so fascinating to work with a business like that that's aimed at an older demographic. It's television, but it's got all the aspects, and the customers love it. So with you, I think it's going to pop. I think it'll pop a lot differently than what it's done.
100%. I think culturally different. I mean, one of the things we see in Asia around the region is when grocery shopping, particularly after COVID, became a mainstream thing to do online, the rising tide lifted all boats. And you now can't compare live commerce in China to anywhere else in the world. It's just another world away, right? But the thing that's happening in live commerce is grocery in China. And what that will do is change the nature of every category for live commerce, because grocery shopping is a routine. It's not a novelty. It's not a one-off. It happens every week. And so when you see that behavior change, you see a lift in all e-commerce. And one of the things I hypothesize coming out of COVID, and you think about what Woolworths did with click and collect in Australia, right? How that whole world just changed, right? E-commerce soared because all of a sudden e-commerce became part of the daily routine. And I think that connection with something we do every day meant that then those shopping experiences, which were, once a month or once every 3 months, became now, I won't even go. I can just buy that now. And so, I think it's a fascinating time. And I think the way we turn up as Australians in live commerce is going to be very interesting. And I think it's not going to be led by us, which I'm too old for this. But you're going to see some Gen Z shoppers ripping this apart,
I think on that bombshell, I'm just conscious of time. Anything else before we close out?
Not much from me. I had this week was good fun topics: luxury, rampant consumerism in fast fashion, and live commerce are all pretty exciting stuff.
That's all for me. Probably the only thing I find super interesting is that just think it's making my mind go, wow, like India and China partnering. You wouldn't have thought that. Like they've been literally competing over. Like India, I think, is the second or third biggest global manufacturer for apparel.
Yeah,
I think they're number 2. So the fact that they're like almost like joining forces, it will be interesting.
It's the scale is insane.
the tides are shifting, and that's why I think retailers are always looking for what's happening to try and stay ahead of all of these changes. And with that, thank you. I'm just look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Absolutely. Oh no, next week I'm away, Alex. So I will.
Oh,
You will have
okay.
to do without me. So it might be. You might have to do 3 and 2 because I'll be skiing in New Zealand.
Oh, nice. It's all right. Yeah.
I'm doing it tough.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.